Welcome to Teaching Visual Art in a Remote Learning Environment. I'm Amanda Bastoni. Let me pull up the next slide. Oops. And I was a teacher at Conval High School. I taught photo video, and after that I was a CTE director in Nashua, and now I work for an educational nonprofit called CAST, and we created Universal Design for Learning. So that's me. And Carrie, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Carrie Mitchmeyer, and I'm the department head for the Visual and Performing Arts Department at Conval High School. I'm in my 5th year of teaching at Conval, but I've also taught at Conant High School, Messinic High School, and I have experience teaching kindergarten through 4th grade art education as well.
Great. And Carrie's an artist herself too. So
yes.
Yeah. So we wanted to host this webinar because we all know we're in some crazy times and we are moving to remote learning. And we were really thinking about teachers in the margins. So my husband's a CTE woodshop teacher. We have with us James Wickham, who is a music and band teacher. So how do we think about like those classes that don't seem to necessarily be great fits for remote learning, right? So it seems like there's some classes that are more natural fits for remote learning and some that might be more complicated. So we started with this guiding question. I teach a traditionally hands-on class like art. What are the first steps I should think about as I move to remote learning? I want to pause there because I do want to reflect on the fact that there are a lot of resources. Before we started, Carrie and I were just talking about how many resources there are for teachers that are free and becoming available. This webinar is really about the process. So less about like, here's a bunch of free resources, although we will share that. It's more about what's the process of moving to this remote learning environment, because I think that is really the question that's, really kind of on everyone's mind right now. So I want to try to see if I can move this. So Carrie, one of the things we talked about in getting ready for this webinar is that what matters in teaching still matters in teaching, right? So building relationships, keeping it simple, even though we're in this new remote learning environment, those kinds of things still matter. And you shared with me what you did on the first day of, prior to remote learning. Could you share that with the folks here?
Sure. I think that to some degree our district was really lucky, or at least I felt lucky in my district, because we had started talking about the potential for having to switch to a remote learning environment about a week, maybe even more before it happened. So I kind of had this like feeling of like, okay, at some point I'm not going to be able to see my students, and what could I do to prepare for that in the event that did happen. So the Friday, the last day of school before our district closed, I was able to get a bunch of baggies and speak with my students and divide out clay. Just to be specific, I do teach all mediums of working with art at Conval High School, but right now my classes are all clay or ceramic classes. So I had started looking online at some resources and seeing like what other people were doing that had already shut down, particularly colleges shut down before we did. So I had actually seen a post from a professor who had put some clay into baggies with sponges and went around and delivered them to his students. And I had thought to myself, well, that would be really tricky to do in our school district. So I just went and got the baggies, put the clay in it, and I was able to get that delivered to, I was able to get that into the hands of 99% of my students before we closed down. And then I was able to contact the students that were not in school that day and have them come to the school and pick their clay up, as well as their sketchbooks. A big part of my class is the actual making component, and I was really concerned about, if we went to remote learning, that my students would be in front of a screen for the majority of the day. And how can I recreate that environment where they're not in my classroom, they're rarely in front of a screen? So how can I provide that environment or that opportunity for them to be in a position where they're making?
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. Okay, so Oops. Let me just see. So one of the first question when we talked about creating this presentation was, what technology are you using right now, Carrie, and how are you using it? The perspective that I have gathered from speaking with educators and talking to experts is really to stick with the technology that you know and what the one your district is recommending. So I just want to put that out there as a caveat, but what technology are you using, Carrie, and how are you using it?
Well, I feel really lucky in the fact that my district is a one-to-one district. So all of our students have Chromebooks from 5th grade through 12th grade. So we have really been spending a lot of professional development time getting used to using technology in our classrooms. And the main platform that we use is the Google Suite. So Google Classroom is like the #1 go-to for, I would say, all of the teachers in our district right now. And I feel really lucky that before we went to remote learning, all of my students were already really used to using Google Classroom on a weekly basis with me. They, as part of their portfolio building in my class, they have to upload images of their work weekly, even in a regular classroom setting.
But something that we were just talking about too was that how are you communicating with students? I would love it if you could talk about, I know you use Instagram and you were saying that social media is becoming maybe even an easier way to communicate with students in this new environment.
So one of my biggest concerns right away when I found out that we were going to remote learning is that students needed to have like kind of a new set of expectations for my class, and to know that I was prepared to take this online, being such a hands-on class that how are they going to continue to work with clay when they don't have wheels or they don't have all the tools that we have available in our studio. So the first thing I did is I utilized my Instagram account, where it's like a 100% school Instagram account. I only put things on it that are school related, and it's called Melting My Art Heart. And so my students have access to that because I share it with them, and with their permission feature their artwork on there. Anyway, so right away I made this little image that's on the slide that just says Ceramics Online, and I posted that onto that account so that students would know these are the new expectations for our class online, and that, like I said, that I was prepared to continue teaching online and communicating with them. So that's one way, is through using Instagram.
Great, yeah. And what I see on here, Carrie, and then we'll go to the next question, everybody, so we leave time for your questions. But what I see here is answer the daily question in Google Classroom every day. I know that's a structure that you have in your classroom, and one of the things that I've been gleaning and recommending is that we try as educators to think, what are the structures we have in our classroom that kids are familiar with, students are familiar with, they know, they anticipate that they will be doing, that we can bring to the online environment. And I know you ask a question, a daily question, and so it seems like what you've done is continue that structure, which gives students familiarity and helps them transition to remote learning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. My daily question is how I take attendance in my class every day. And actually this semester this year I piloted a new way of doing that, where my students have something called like an attendance card. It's about this big in my classroom. So when they come in, their attendance card has their name and their preferred pronoun on it, and that they fill out on the first day, and they can find that card each day when they come in, and they will write their response. And that really helps students to just kind of get in that mindset of like, okay, I'm starting this class, I'm here, and looking for what the question is for that day, and then being ready to answer that question within the first few minutes of class. And so it was really important to me that I take that same daily practice and apply it to my classroom. So a lot of times that question will actually relate to the content that we're working on, or something to do with what we're doing in class that week. So that way there's kind of like, it all kind of flows into each other.
Yeah, good. And so what I hear you saying is you took that same structure from the traditional classroom and you've brought it online. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
and I've used the Google Classroom has a question function. So it's a really easy way for me to keep track of who's answered the question each day. And also, like, for example, this morning when I checked for yesterday's question, I had 10 students that hadn't answered it. So I could send out a quick email to all 10 of those students and just say, hey, I'm sorry you missed Google Classroom yesterday. I hope you got a chance to see the question. If you didn't, please, check in today and answer that question so I can mark off that you were in class yesterday.
awesome. Awesome. Okay. So we did want to share some resources. We don't want to overwhelm you in any way, and we are talking about process, but, since I've been doing this improv class, we did want to give you these resources. So Carrie, could you just briefly, these are all live links. And if you go on Bitly, you can click on them and they'll take you to all these locations. I will just say that Learning Designed is a platform that we've created free for all New Hampshire educators, where you can get access to webinars like this. Down below, we also have the remote instructions, recommendations, and resources from the Department of Ed. And so Carrie, if you just briefly could tell us why you wanted to include these resources, then we'll move on.
Sure. So I was thinking about how, and I was talking with Amanda about this before we started today, there's so much out there. There's so much free information, videos, things for students to access, and for us as teachers to access. It just feels like really overwhelming. So I wanted to put these resources on here because I find that these are the ones that I'm using the most. And so I can kind of talk about those a little bit. The first one at the top is just the fact that we can access museums virtually. There's so many of them, and I'm sure that people are aware that that's something that you can do, but I just thought it would be important to have that link that's a quick and easy way to get there. The second one is the Art of Education University, and as an art educator, I've been using this platform or this service for years now, and I'm sure most art educators are aware of it, but it's just probably like one of the biggest resources and options for professional development out there. And that's where the image on the right-hand side of the slide is coming from. When I saw this posted on social media, I just felt like this perfectly represents what I'm trying to do online. So that's why I copied this image from them and put it on the right side of the slide. And but anyway, so that's got like everything that you could ever possibly want in a nutshell. Another wonderful resource is offerings from PBS. So the art assignment is on PBS, and there's a link there that has great short videos that have connections to contemporary artists, as well as short assignments that you can provide your students where they don't need to have a lot of resources or access. They can do the majority of these things at home, and they're not super long. Like, I just really enjoy that you can watch something in under 10 minutes and get the art history component, get the watch artists working in their studios, and then have that little assignment at the end. PBS also offers a series called Art 21, and that's just another phenomenal resource. Something new that I have been using and just kind of encountered this week, but I have found that it's a great supplement to Google Classroom, is Padlet. And I really needed something like Padlet for my online class, because Google Classroom, even though you can attach images, it's not a visual learning environment like something like Instagram is or like Facebook is. You can't scroll through and look at all of the images and easily comment on them. So Padlet is a way for my students to post their work, see each other's work, comment, critique, give feedback, and it's all on one wall together. And so that's like kind of my most exciting thing that I've found just throughout my research over the last week or so. I think there's also a link there for social media, which I think might just be a link to my Instagram account that shows images of what I've been posting and what you could see on something like Instagram for a classroom.
Perfect, Carrie. So let's look at the 7 things that really jumped out to you for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think let go of perfection really key. It's important to remember that for our students, but as well as us as educators, right? So it's a big leap to go from teaching face-to-face to teaching remotely. So letting go of perfection for kids and letting go of perfection for adults, and thinking about parents in kind of a new role, right? You know, I was telling Carrie earlier that my 3-year-old has come into Zoom meetings and she's in the background, and, you know, I just have to let go of that because now we're working from home, teaching, and sometimes some kids are having to keep their siblings entertained.
That's a big part of it, Amanda. And also just realizing that like our students maybe have siblings and they're all sharing one computer, or they're all trying to be on the internet at the same time, and the bandwidth won't allow for all of them to be working simultaneously online. Or like you said, that they might be watching after their siblings because their parents are working. And so I really have to let go of the expectation, some of the expectations I had for my students in the past in an in-school setting.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. I really resonate here with number 2, universal design for learning. Really, one of the focuses is on making sure your learning objectives are clear. And I think I have been finding that that's even more important online, Carrie, and I'm not sure, you know, I'd love to have you weigh in, but as my husband's creating his woodshop online classroom, he will give an assignment through video and something is lost in translation. So sometimes it feels like in video or in remote learning environments, we just need to be even more clear. I don't know what your experience is.
Yeah, I try to make my directions for my assignments very, I try not to get too wordy with things and really make them cut and dry, and just like very simplified. I also think that, I guess I use topics in Google Classroom. So we have a topic that's just for sketchbook practice, and we have a topic that's just for studio practice. And then we have a topic that's just for the daily question. So every time something is posted, it goes under one of those 3, and my students can like really clearly see that, okay, there's an objective to make 3-dimensionally. There's an objective to plan and sketch in my sketchbook, and then there's an objective to answer that question every day. So just kind of trying to like organize that information into those 3 components for them.
Yeah, good. So I don't want to stay too long on this. We can come back to it if we want. But there was a question, Carrie, that came up in the chat just now about Palette. So I was wondering if you could address that.
Can you click, Amanda, can you click on chat just so I can reread the question? It's at the bottom.
Sorry. I just
went I don't know.
Hold on one second.
Oh no, I was able to do it. So I can answer that as you're kind of pulling it back up. It says, clarify, you have one Padlet wall for the class, and each student posts their work in progress. So you could do that, absolutely, if you wanted to. The way I've used Padlet so far is every time I have a specific assignment. So for example, we were doing work around architecture and art. And as a startup, as a daily question, I had asked students to tell me what their favorite building was, any building that they wanted. And then I had said, could you please find an image of a building that represents that and post that image to Padlet? Because they were coming up with all these amazing buildings, and I could sit there and Google each one to go find out what it looked like. But when I shared a wall, I made just one wall that was buildings in Padlet, and I shared that link on my Google Classroom so that students could just click on that link and copy and paste their image of their building to that wall. And then we could all see everybody's buildings all, over that wall all at once. And if I wanted to like have them post their own work, which we haven't gotten to that point yet, at some point once they've had more time to make and they can choose or curate a piece they want to share with the group, I will ask them to post, one thing from the last 2 weeks or one sketchbook drawing that they want to get feedback on. And that would be a separate wall that would be just for that activity.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. So, this is another question that we were hoping to discuss, but we have kind of touched on it a little bit. So, we're recommending that we try to keep, as we mentioned, some of our structures in place to really create that culture remotely. In the slides you shared previously, or we shared previously, Carrie, one of the recommendations was to get students to work together, right, to collaborate. So you've shared that you have the daily question structure. What structures, I'm curious, I'm adjusting this a little bit, what structures have you developed or do you think you'll develop to get students to really collaborate?
That's an excellent question. This is a tricky, I think, a tricky thing to do through remote learning. I know that I could create a slideshow with a template and then assign specific groups of students to work collaboratively on that slideshow. So whether it's for maybe researching an artist, and then they could each kind of add their own slides into that. Another thing that I'm thinking about doing is having them create, well, it's again another slideshow, but they would be creating a portfolio of their work. This would probably be a couple of weeks out, but a portfolio of their work, and then use screencast to video record themselves presenting that, and then they could watch each other's videos of their portfolio presentations and give feedback that way.
Yeah, one of the other educators that we interviewed during a webinar said she was creating a buddy system. So she was, assigning students buddies for the week, and maybe with the daily question, they had to post each other's question just so they had to find a way to communicate with each other. Another thing that I've seen is you can create a Google Doc and have students say, okay, work with your buddy to answer the question in the Google Doc all together. So then you can sort of, they're working all together on one document, but they have a buddy or a person that they're working specifically on. I just think we should continue to talk and think about how do we encourage students to collaborate.
I think that's a really cool suggestion, Amanda, because one of the things I have done in all of my classes, and my students really love this, is we do a challenge. And it will take the entire class, and it's usually just one, but occasionally it will be 2 classes if there's a lot of planning. So for example, we did a mini art challenge where students were grouped together. They had to come up with a theme and make mini art exhibition and then install it somewhere in the school. And if I used your idea of using the Google Docs, I could do something similar where I group students, give them a challenge, they have to work on it through that doc, and then present it somehow to the class.
Yeah, and or share it with you. Another thing that I've heard from teachers is, you have them in groups, they share that Google Doc with you, and then you do a video where you share everybody's and kind of discuss and lead them through the process of seeing everyone's work. So, I guess I just want us to really think about, and it's overwhelming. This is such a crazy thing that's happening. I just want to keep stressing that, to move totally remotely and have this pandemic going on. But it is really important to think for so many students, school is their social outlet, right? I mean, it's their friends, it's their support groups. And, I'm worried personally about what the long-term impact will be if we can't help students build these collaborations. So yeah, I guess that's just my 2 cents. Okay, so next question. Don't be afraid to ask for help. This is something we really want to remind teachers. Help from each other, help from special educators, help from peers. Who have you reached out to or had meetings with already, Carrie, in your district or outside of your district?
One thing that I've been doing is, when I need help, it's usually because I'm struggling with getting a student to be involved with the online remote learning. And so I will always reach out to the student first and see if I can get a response from them. And if I'm not getting a response or not having communication, the next thing that I will do is create an email that has all of that student's teachers and counselor on the email, and just say, hey, everybody, I'm struggling with this. Are any of you having success? Are you having the same problem? What has anybody reached out to a parent yet? What kind of feedback do you have for me with this student? And I have found that to be very helpful because then I've found out things about the student that totally makes it understandable why they're not communicating with me, or found out that that they actually are doing really well in an English class or a math class right now. So there's something else that's going on that I have to kind of like work out with them. So it's nice to be able to like create that group dynamic through an email where we can all like help each other with the student to problem solve.
Yeah,
Trying to
I
think
love,
if there's
oh, sorry, Carrie, I just wanted to add in that I really love that you brought up that idea too of collaborating with parents, because I feel like in remote learning, we are now way more, we have the opportunity to become much more involved with parents in some ways because they're now watching their kids during the day while the student is trying to learn. I know that, Abe has basically the second time a kid doesn't answer something in Google, he calls home. And, he's learning from parents that the wireless net access they have is very spotty, or, for all these other reasons, the student is struggling, but engaging the parent early on, even more so than in the face-to-face classroom, has seemed to be working for him. I don't know what you think about that.
Mhm. I think that it is definitely important to reach out to parents, especially if a student is not, doing well after a couple of days of having, you're not seeing that they're completing assignments or even answering like the daily question. One of my big concerns though is that if a parent has, let's say, 3 kids that are in the district, and each of those 3 kids has as many as 4 teachers, and they don't have internet service, or the parents at work, and they get as many as 16 calls from teachers
Absolutely.
in a day, that can be very overwhelming. And so I think that it's important to have those conversations like in a team with the other teachers and the counselor before making that phone call, so that we're not putting an added stress onto the family. But then, if it is that's not the case, and that the student is just, playing video games on their Chromebook all day, and it's not because there's additional stressors, is definitely calling home is a great thing to do.
Yeah, good. No, that's a really good point. Great. Okay, so Carrie, tell us about where you're personally getting support from.
I have found that my colleagues are an amazing support system, and we actually had a text stream going a few days ago, and we were just saying how we miss each other and how we have been in like Zoom meetings just like this, or we've been in Google Meets, but usually there's as many as like 18 to 50 other people in that meeting, and so we don't get to have that same like face-to-face interaction that we would normally have every day. So this morning we planned to have a coffee meeting at 8 o'clock, and just the 3 of us had a Google Meet together, and we got to just say, how our classes were doing, talking about specific students that are doing really well or struggling. And so I just found that one of the best supports I've had through this process is my colleagues, and having that time to just kind of meet up with them. So on this slide, there is 2 active links to both of their Instagram accounts for school as well. So if anybody wants to check out what they've been posting, because there's some amazing videos, connections with students, and other resources that they share as well on their Instagram accounts.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Carrie. I know that Abe has been meeting with 2 or 3 teachers Monday morning at 9 every Monday since this has happened, and they really don't talk. I mean, they do talk about students and work, but a lot of it is just, talking of supporting one another in social emotional ways around, this is crazy, this is happening, how are you feeling? Because I think that we don't want to downplay the need to purposefully connect with our peers, because we would be doing that if we were going into school every day, right? And it wouldn't be, it would come naturally and it would be easy, but now we have to sort of purposely make time to do that. And I just want to reiterate to people, and I hear you saying it, it's really important that we do that.
Yeah, at Conval, we have as a collective agreement that in between classes, we stand in the hallways to engage with students and just have a presence. And Ben and Mary and I all stand at this one intersection in the hallway. And we have so many amazing conversations every day at that intersection on all sorts of different topics. And so this week I have definitely felt like, oh, I'm missing my like hallway chats with my colleagues. And so having that coffee this morning with them online just definitely like helped me feel healthier all around.
And that reminds me of another educator told me that they are just hosting online open office hours. So they, give their assignment to the student, but then they are just saying, hey, this Zoom link will be open for the hour today or every day from 11 to 12. I'll just be there. I'll be doing my work, but you kids can come on and ask questions. And they were sharing with me that the first, 3 days, one kid just came and hung out the whole time with them. And, it made me think that's often the kid that's up at your desk asking you questions, wants that support anyway. So, how do we offer that support? Now that you're saying this coffee hour thing, it also makes me think we could share that with our peers, right? We could say, I'm going to be here for kids, but hey, drop by and see me from 11 to noon. This is always going to be here. Come see me,
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that, Amanda. And just speaking of office hours, I did have my first set of office hours with my students yesterday, and I'm going to continue to offer those same hours every Wednesday where they can check in for an hour, and sometimes there'll be like a question that will prompt the conversation. But for our first meeting together, I decided that it was good to just kind of like say, hey, how's it going? How are we doing? How's technology? And kind of let them be the ones that drove the conversation. And my first meeting was at 8:00, and I had thought for sure, like, this is going to be the lowest attended meeting of the day because it's the earliest one. And I was really surprised that it was the highest attended meeting I had, but it was also like the most like excited and rambunctious group at like 8 a.m. They were all ready to go, very excited to interact with each other and show each other their rooms. And some people had pets. There was one person with a parrot, one person had a whole box full of chicks, baby chicks, and another person had their cat. So we had a blast. It was a good time.
Do you think, Carrie, you would ever use the Zoom feature? I'm going to ask this quickly and then we'll keep going. Would you ever use Zoom in that way to have, like, you could have a still life up in your Zoom and you guys could actually sketch together almost. I don't know if that
Yeah, that's definitely something we could do. Or I think I would be really interested also like having conversations around artwork like that too, where I'm just projecting maybe 2 images and they are comparing them and having conversations about likes, dislikes, things that are similar, things that are different, why the artwork might be an important piece or why I would choose that for them to look at for the day.
Yeah, that makes me feel so curious if the remote aspect, so if we were to have all the students together and they each shared their work via Zoom, like held up their picture or the thing that they've made, I'm so curious if they would actually be more willing to share because this generation, well, not just this generation, but like if they're more comfortable behind a screen or if there's something about the remote interaction that would actually cause them to be potentially more engaged. That's not an answer I don't think anyone has yet, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Me too.
So I wanted to share this slide with everyone just because it's been more than 10 days, but the feedback from Italy, this came from Edutopia, is really less is more. And I know that that's sort of something we're hitting you over the head with during this webinar, but it's just, I really want to, I don't know if the word is give permission, but, I'm going to go with that word, give permission to folks to give short assignments. We can scaffold, that's what I heard you saying earlier, Carrie, teach them to use the technology as they go. The first assignment wasn't remotely videotape yourself, so just remembering that this is really new for kids and really new for you. So patience, kindness, and then less is more. So I think this is one of the last questions. So this kind of deals with what we have talked about so far. Pacing your delivery, as we said, less is more. What is an assignment, just maybe one that you've given so far, Carrie?
So I had a colleague right before we went to remote learning that had said the same thing kind of that you just said, Amanda, and I think it is important to repeat that instead of instead of me just saying, oh, here's a unit, this is what we're going to do, or here's a big project, this is what I'd like you to do. I've been trying to just like give them little bite sizes that lead up to things. So one of the first questions that I asked my students was, like as their daily question was, what does it mean to feel at home? And so that, we got all sorts of different responses from people. So then the next question following day was, what is your favorite like piece of furniture in your house? And to draw a picture of it in their sketchbook. And then that very next day, I think I had shared a video with them from the art assignment about something, it's called Conjure a Studio. And basically, I asked them to watch that video and then to create a comfortable space in their room or their house where they felt like they could make work. And I had offered to them that, this could be at your kitchen table. It could be at a desk in your room. It could be like at your bed if you have a space near, like where there's a bookshelf that you can store materials. And so they watched that video, they conjured their studio space, and then they photographed it and they shared it as part of the assignment. So it's just like these little things that kind of connect that each day we're building on. After that assignment, the next day I had said, well, okay, you've thought about home, you've sketched a piece of furniture that's comfortable, you've conjured your studio space. Now I want you to design your own piece of furniture. It could be, again, a bed, a chair, a couch, whatever is most ideal for you. And so like I said, that just like led into that next piece. And then where does that go from there? So far, we've made a studio space. We've done 2 drawings. Now's the time to start thinking a little bit bigger. So the following day, I had asked them to now that you've drawn and designed, let's build. So you can use the clay that you went home with in your little baggie, or you can use any found materials, whether it's cardboard or cereal box, or I had one student use some pipe cleaners and fabric. And so at that point, they had a couple of days to make a piece of furniture that they had designed.
Yeah, that's great. And what I hear you saying in there too, Carrie, is that not only are you scaffolding the art skills, but you're scaffolding how they communicate with you remotely. So you didn't have them take a photo on day one. You had them respond in Google Classroom. Now you can see, check in, who didn't respond, and make sure they know how. Then they share a photo. Who didn't upload a photo, make sure that they have the tools to do that. So you're also, what I hear you saying is that you're also scaffolding and being able to then check in which students have the capabilities, the technology, the resources to remotely communicate. And then you can help them, I'm imagining, along the way if it seems like someone's really struggling.
Yeah, I got actually I was surprised by some of the emails that I received from students that, they are very aware that like at the end of everything that I send out, I'm like, reach out, I'm here if you have questions. But I got quite a few emails from students that were just like, I would give anything to have a regular class again, or I'd come to school every day on time if it meant I could come to school again. But they also were able to ask some clarifying questions in there, like, is it okay if I, make my sculptures out of paper instead of making them out of clay? And I'm always like, yes, absolutely. If you're excited about making a paper chair, I'd love to see what your paper chair looks like. So just getting that engagement and that excitement from them, I will take anything that they want to make. It does not have to be just clay.
Great. You have a question in the chat, Carrie, about something you just spoke about. So do you mind taking a moment answering that?
Oh, sure. Yes. The video I was talking about for conjuring a workspace, and I just want to say that this goes back to having support. I had talked with my colleague Mary Goldthwait and had said, I really want my students to set up a space like right as like one of their first assignments, and she is just an amazing resource. And she had said, oh, there's an art assignment called Conjure a Workspace. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. So if you were to click on that link that's under the resources page that we have that slide, the link is art assignment. You should be able to find the video right in that art assignment platform. It might be Conjure a Studio, I think is the name of it.
Thank you, Carrie.
Great. Okay, so the last question, and actually what I'm going to do is stop sharing so we can see each other. I'll read the last question out loud, which is really, so often students take our classes, or really your classes, because they have a relationship with you, they love the subject, or they really are, they want to not be in that sort of traditional behind a desk learning environment. The big question is, how do we address that in a remote learning environment? So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen. I'm going to now sort of open the floor to everyone to think about how they might answer this question. I'll start with Carrie. So Carrie, thinking about this question, what comes to your mind?
Well, one thing that comes to my mind, and I'm not sure if I said this already, but I guess it's worth saying again, is that when I found out we were going to remote learning, I was concerned about my students being in front of a screen from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. And how can I, as their teacher, provide them time to say it's okay to close this down and be a maker and have my studio time. And so basically what I've tried to do is make it so, yes, they do have to check into my classroom every day, but then after they do that, they can look at the assignment and then close their computer and take time in their sketchbook or with their clay or whatever it is that they're making that day, and allow themselves the time to do that. And I've tried to really restrict the amount of videos I post, or to require them to be in front of a computer for the hour and a half that I would normally have them in class. And so I think I posted one video last week, which was that Conjure Studio, under 10 minutes, and one video this week, which was a TED Talk, also. Okay, so it was 11 minutes, but I try to keep the video watching to a minimum and just keep it a really short length of time. So I think I may only post videos once a week for them and just keep them really short so that then they can close their Chromebook or computer and spend more time making.
Great. Does anyone else have thoughts on that they want to share on, anything that we've shared in the video? Questions that you have, you can post them in the chat. I've unmuted everyone. If you want to remain muted, you can. But just to sort of open this up as a conversation. So anyone else want to weigh in on something?
What level, Carrie, do you teach? Just because I missed the first couple minutes.
No problem. I'm a high school art teacher. So
okay, me too.
And all of our classes at Conval High School are heterogeneous. So we don't level anything. So like right now in all three of my classes, I have a variety of students from first time taking clay to third or even fourth time taking the ceramics class, and they're all in there together.
Okay.
I just shared in the chat the bit.ly link to the slideshow. So if people do want to access the resources that Carrie shared, that bit.ly link is live. So just wanted to let you know about that. Okay, any other thoughts about how do we build, I'm really curious also about this, how do we build relationships with kids remotely? And how do we make sure that we're doing that social emotional learning piece and also the culture building piece?
Yeah, I'm feeling the need to connect with them definitely more. I'm feeling very disconnected. And this morning I had a student who was sending me emails asking me questions, and it was not making sense. He was using words that I wasn't using, and I said, oh my gosh, he's not understanding what I'm asking for. So, and I'm using Google Classroom and Google Meet, not on a daily basis, but I think I'm going to start doing it more. But I said, can I meet with you right now? Just you and me?
That's great.
And he said, okay. And so I talked to him for like 5 minutes, and then he had his little icon on and not his face. I said, can I see your face? I said, I'm letting you see my face. And I look great today, not. And, so basically, so he chatted with me for like 5 minutes, and, I said, I think you're overwhelmed. I said, there have been 3 assignments so far, and you're asking me this, that, and everything. I said, start with assignment number 1, finish that one first. And I reviewed it. But I mean, all the directions, I'm trying to be as short worded as possible, because I think this is a strain on their reading too, when you have these mixed level classes,
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. And I have a couple students too that I've been like, they've kind of come in a little late. Like it took them a couple of days to get into Google Classroom or to start really getting on board with that this is going to be something we're doing for a potentially long period of time. And so I've had to do the same thing where I'm like, let's just go back to number one, like don't worry about how many there are. Let's just start at the beginning and start with the first assignment. And we'll check in tomorrow and see how it goes and how you did, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think what the two of you are both hitting on is because we're not seeing the students every day, right, in person, we can feel very detached from their lives or from what they're experiencing. If a student comes in, they had a bad day, you can tell, right? Or you can reach out. That's why I like Carrie's daily question. I just want to reiterate that, because if you ask something daily and you ask them to respond, you know who's responding. You have at least that starting point to see like, okay, this person responded or they didn't. Now, if they don't respond tomorrow, I need to reach out. I need to engage them. So, and I also just want to say again, just would like to give permission to not always feel that you have to maybe tie it to your curriculum. Maybe it's a really good place to just say, here's a mood meter. How's everyone feeling? Or, here's, like, did you get outside today? Or did you interact with a friend or something? Because they're missing that, and they get that in our classes, especially I feel like in art classes, where
Right.
they're talking to each other while they're doing things and making. And
Yeah, I actually have been doing a daily question, and like yesterday, my question was, what do you have for pets? I mean, like so today was how many siblings do you have? I mean, I'm asking questions like that to get to know them a little better, because I haven't had them in class very long, and we talk about stuff like that in class, when I'm walking around helping them. So I kind of feel like, okay, and then I have been, like the other day I talked to them when I was on the Google Meet about routine, having a daily routine for yourself, and about getting outside. I said, and the last thing I said to the student I talked to today, I said, get outside for like 10 minutes, a walk, sit outside, whatever. I said, you need some fresh air, He said, because it's like a meltdown in here, is what he said to me about his home life. And I was like, yeah, you need to get outside.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, that's really good. So anyone else want to weigh in on that idea of either, how are you, do you have a question that you'd love us, the community here, to respond to? Do you have something you're struggling with, or just an idea you want to share? And being a teacher, I could wait.
So are there only 4 of us on here?
Oh, no, there's more. There's 9 participants, but I heard someone speaking. Was it James or?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. And thank you for leading this. We're at my school at Boston International High School. We're all doing the Google Class. Now, a lot of teachers have been doing this, which is great because, I can go there and see how they set it up and see how they handle it and how their students are responding. It's something new for me. Being in the art room, I try to do everything by hand. But now I have to sort of, I got a good response for the like 95% of the students joined the Google class, didn't get a good response for first thing was a questionnaire asking them about how they operate at home, what they need, etc. But I know they're overwhelmed right now. So the idea that I need to use this time in a transition I do to learn how to do things like Padlet and some other things that I've come across recently. So, that's what they're familiar with. That's what they can handle. So what they learn to do with their hands, now translate that into these digital formats. And so that's where I'm headed right now. Those things work best, like Photoshop, etc., if you know what you're doing. So now maybe with the little bit of extra stuff they learn with the ruler and everything else, now maybe that Padlet could be a way to get them going. So this, I'm at the moment we're kind of on the threshold. That's what I'm struggling with. It was good to hear a lot of Carrie's insights and her perspective. Those things really help. So I appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. And, I was thinking about this myself, how would I approach this? And Carrie, have you thought at all, or anyone else, has anyone thought about asking the students? Maybe the daily question is, what's something you want to do, or do you have an idea of a resource we could use, or sort of, asking the kids to weigh in. Any thoughts about that, Carrie?
Yesterday during my Google Meets, I had just talked to my students about how, I obviously am guiding and running Google Classroom, but I am very open to if they want to send me an email with a list of questions that they'd like to start seeing appear each day, that they can offer up any questions that they'd like me to use. And also if there's any topics that they would like me to cover in terms of assignments. I try really hard not to take away too much choice with their making practice. So I will either usually give them a prompt to use a specific material with an open platform as to what they do with it, or I will give them a prompt to make something specific like furniture, but then they can use any size, any parameters, any materials that they want. And so just in those meetings yesterday, I had just communicated with them, if you love to focus on doing portraits, or you want to focus on, something in nature, or, more abstract or more representational, like anything you guys want, like send me the email, send me the request, and I'll build it in.
Great. I was thinking too, and maybe this would be useful to hear from everyone, or if people wanted to weigh in. We are all now working from home with our kids or our families, too. So what's your daily, Carrie, if you don't mind just sharing, what's your daily work process like? And I'm particularly curious, are you finding you're doing more in the afternoon or evening because your kids and husband or spouse or significant other is home too? What is that looking like for you?
It's a little tricky because my husband's a teacher also, so we are both, doing remote learning at the same time, and our daughter is, doing homeschool. So one thing that I have found that has been very helpful for me is if I can get up at 6 and get my, get ready for the day and get my cup of coffee and do my attendance. So what that basically means for me is that I just go through and look to see who from the day before didn't get a chance to answer the question, and then I send those students emails and try to reach out to them. And I also really like to respond to every single comment that they make on Google Classroom. So when they answer the question of the day, I will respond to each student's response. So that takes about an hour, and by the time I'm done with that, it's close to 7:30, 8 o'clock, and so I have to take a little bit of a break and help facilitate my daughter getting breakfast and getting her ready for the day. I would say I usually do about an hour of work with my students and then work with her for an hour. And then I do an hour of work with my students, and then I do get her going with something for an hour. So kind of do this back and forth. Some days are more schoolwork for me because I might have 4 meetings online back to back. So she has to be really independent, or my husband will help her with that during those time periods. And so what that means is that my workday will go until 4 o'clock, and then I'm still answering emails or checking posts while I'm cooking dinner. And I have had to just this week be more restrictive and say at 3, I'm gonna get my assignments ready for the next day and get them scheduled, and I'm going to walk away from my computer if I can.
Great. So the link is locked. So Tim Leary is leaving and saying that the link is locked. So I'll check on that link. But what I'll do is before you leave, I'll also put a link just directly so you can view the slides just in case so you have those.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So here's this link that should take you right to the slideshow and the live links. So let me know if there's an issue with that. Oh no, here, I'm sorry guys. Give me one more second. Does anyone else want to weigh in before I share this link on any thoughts from this webinar so far, or struggles that you're having?
Planning to have another one?
Yes, so actually, James Wickham, do you want to, I just reached out to James and asked him, you are muted, so I'm gonna unmute you. What's our one upcoming conversation that we might be having? Jim?
Similar conversation, but with the music room. Hi, Carrie.
Yeah, so we're thinking we want to have more of these. I do want everyone to know here, this link should work. So that second Google Doc should take you to the presentation. If someone doesn't mind checking it, that would be great. Let me know. So Learning Design is a platform that CAST has hosted for free and offered to New Hampshire educators. There are groups within that could form within Learning Design. I just want to say if art educators were interested in forming a group on learning design and supporting each other, please reach out to me directly. I'm going to share my email here and we could set that up for you guys. But we will be having more of these chats moving forward. So you can check out, if you registered at Learning Design, then you would be able to see we have an events calendar there and stuff. So I think
will I be able to see that? Because it just went away when I was just starting to write your email.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's in the chat, so it just probably scrolled up here, cast.org. There's my email. Thank you. Michelle said that the link worked. Perfect. Thank you for doing that. So any other, is there a topic that anyone would like to see a webinar on? We have 2 minutes. I'd love to know, just polling you who are in the audience here, is there another topic that you'd love to see?
I'd like to know more about Padlet. I downloaded it while we were at the beginning when we were on here, and I'm going to go play on it, and I'm going to look up videos on how to do it, but I just really want to know more about that.
Great. Carrie, would you be comfortable sharing your email so if folks have—
Oh yeah, sure. Because I would also, I think it's so much fun just to see how other people are using it, because I just jumped right in, but I'm sure there's so many applications you could use it for. So I'll just put my email address on here.
Yeah, perfect. So,
so feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or if there's something that you're excited about and you want to share.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other topics before we close in 1 minute that anyone would love me to do a webinar on?
I know one thing Carrie mentioned that I totally agree with, but I am unsure the answer of is when we are talking about the size of the lessons that we are assigning that the students do on their own. I know in the back of my head, I'll click assign on something and well, was that enough work? Was that too much work?
Right.
Was it the right amount of work? Should I poll my students and see if they have enough to do at home? And then what's funny is I recently sent out a survey to one of my classes asking them to all be available for some ear training in my theory class and what time would be best for them to all get together for a video chat. And I couldn't believe it, but 3 or 4 kids said the same thing, and that was, please don't make me get up before 11 a.m. And so one of the things I've learned through this experience is that when kids don't have the structure of school, they might not necessarily struggle with time management, but they definitely have moved their daily schedule, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
Jim,
so,
Gabe found that too. So when he gave his assignment, he was having them turn it in at 3 o'clock, and they begged him, put the assignment turn-in time midnight. So now he has it at midnight that day because they're doing it so much later, like in the evening,
yes.
I have, just to piggyback on that, I have a lot of elementary, so a lot of my students don't have their own technology, so they actually need to wait for a parent to get home from work to use their cell phone to be able to get on the internet and see even what's been posted for the day. So their whole schedule has shifted to when they're even able to access it.
That's a great point.
And just to add to that too, Michelle, is that I know this doesn't sound like it should be what's happening, but I know that some of my students' parents have lost their jobs recently, and my students are working at grocery stores, and so they've had to change their work hours, and now they're working during the school day. because they're the only ones that have a job in the household now. And so I think it is important to be somewhat flexible, knowing that some students are just having to figure out different life situations. But also just knowing that, like, I'm going to say that I'm going to have my first block meeting at 8, and I will have students show up to that, and I'll have students that won't show up to that. And maybe I can find another time that will work for those students, or I'll just communicate with them a different way if I can. But I think it is important to set up structures and allow the kids to access that structure, the ones that can, and then provide other options for students who can't.
Yeah, that's great. And Jim, Mr. I just wanted to say that I think having a webinar on what's too much, what's enough, like the teacher perspective, I think would be awesome.
Yeah.
Many reasons, but one is just that, like, educators aren't used to working from home. So, like, as a nonprofit, so I work in a nonprofit now, I work from home a lot, so I'm familiar with that. But and because teacher salaries are really dependent on the community's perception of the school, right, or of the teacher, or how hard they're, so there's all these factors and pressures, I think, that come to play in how much work you assign, because is that a judgment of you as a teacher, how hard you're working, right? And so I just think that's a really, really important and excellent conversation. So I'm going to propose that, and let's think about that for next time. I think it's a great idea. And so
I'm looking forward to what the answer is, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think you're going to get a lot of different answers.
Absolutely.
That will be great.
Yeah, it'll be district dependent. And, I know I have thoughts on what the Department of Ed in New Hampshire would say, but maybe we could get them to weigh in. That would be cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end now, though, to respect people's times, and hopefully you will all join us on the next one, and we'll keep pushing this information out. Learning Designed is the platform, and when you go to the slides that I shared with you, you can access it. So, and lastly, thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah. Okay.
Quick
Bye.
question before you log off. So
See you tomorrow, Carrie.
Bye. See you tomorrow.
I learned about this from Tim Marie early this morning. She had sent an email out to our people. Is that probably how I'll find out about future meetings?
Oh, say it one more time, Michelle. Who sent it out? I'm curious.
Tim Marie? Leary?
Okay, great. Yeah, that's great. Let me share. Are you a New Hampshire teacher, Michelle?
No, Massachusetts. I used to teach in New Hampshire.
Okay. Here is so what I will do, could you put your email in if you're comfortable, Michelle, putting your email in the chat, I'll write it down, and I will find a way to make sure you have access to these as we push them out.
And Tim Marie is really great too. I'm sure if she knows about it,
She'll share it with everyone. Well, I hope you got something out of it,
I totally did, absolutely.
Okay, great, perfect. So I am going to take that down and make sure. Oh, you're in Worcester. Yeah, great. So CAST is based in Boston, the company that I work for. Yeah, cool. So, yeah, have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.